We hear in the gospel today Jesus telling us about the greatest commandments. First, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. In other words, God, who is love, must be our beginning, our end, and everything in between. And in response to what God has done and is doing for us and in us and through us, we must love those around us. Now, we all know that some people are easier to love than others. And most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, find it hard loving anything or anyone more than ourselves anyways. But regardless, God gave us commandments and not just suggestions to love him first and others as ourselves. So let's look at the book of Ruth from our first reading today for some inspiration. It starts out with a man named Elimelech moving from Bethlehem of Judea to the land of Moab with his wife Naomi and their two sons due to a famine. Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi alone with her two sons, who eventually married Moabite women named Orpah and Ruth. Then both of her sons die, leaving Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth widows with no means of support. Naomi decided to move back to her family home in Bethlehem and encouraged her daughter-in-laws to go back to their families and their own gods. And Orpah takes her advice. But Ruth, she refuses to leave Naomi alone and tells her, "Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." And with that, Ruth accompanied her mother-in-law out of love, even though she knew that she wouldn't be very welcome as a foreigner, and especially a Moabite woman in the land of Judah. But God worked out an amazing plan for a prominent man named Boaz, who turned out to be a relative of Ruth's dead husband. And he was also eligible to fulfill the custom that we find in the book of Deuteronomy that directed a relative of a man who dies should marry the widow in order to continue his lineage. Boaz, he marries Ruth, ensuring that both widows who had faced such misfortunes in the land of Moab would be well taken care of for the rest of their lives in Judah. Boaz and Ruth were blessed with children and grandchildren. One of them was named David, who was a shepherd, a giant killer, and eventually king of all Israel. Oh yeah, and from David's line, Jesus came, the Messiah, our Savior. The book of Ruth sits between the books of Judges and 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. It's really not a very long read. You can finish it in about 15 minutes, and I'd really encourage you to go and do that. But its lessons, even though it's so short, have impact that profoundly affect all of us even today. It's a remarkable, true story of redemption, love, and loyalty. God is rarely mentioned in the book, but there's no mistaking his unseen hand working behind the scenes to bring good out of tragedy. And yesterday, my wife Ginger reminded me that it was 31 years ago that Hurricane Andrew hit Homestead, Florida, where we were living at the time. We were only there for about a month after we moved from Louisiana when the Air Force closed the base there. And we had just finished unpacking all of our household goods and put our furniture in the right place and got our new place all fixed up. We had to evacuate very shortly after that with little more than the clothes on our back. We lost almost everything in that hurricane, and for the next several months, our family of 5 lived out of hotel rooms and sometimes out of our van. But we trusted in God's unseen plan, as we navigated our way through many twists and turns and a lot of different circumstances until we finally got assigned here at Eglin Air Force Base. We arrived here with almost nothing, so we had to start again from scratch. And with the love and help of family, friends, and neighbors, we established a new life here. And 31 years later, I'm convinced that the series of events that Hurricane Andrew set in motion for us was probably the best blessing we ever could have had. The book of Ruth shows us how God's unseen hand is always present with ordinary, hard living and with suffering people who persevere in faith despite hardships. It reminds us of how God can multiply our seemingly small acts of love, kindness, and the good news of Jesus Christ that we share with others today, so that they have lasting, far-reaching effects in our world for generations to come. And as we strive to love the Lord with all our heart, soul, and mind, and our neighbors as ourselves, the effects on our souls are eternal, and the hope of heaven, by the merits of Jesus Christ, real.